Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about how the third world, or parts of it at least, are on the threshold of unraveling and going into a food shortage-induced death spiral. Now, we're getting a little microcosm of how this is going to look with, say, the island of Sri Lanka, formerly known as Ceylon. This is an island off the south east coast of India, and I suppose by the poorest countries in the world standards, it's not the worst, but it's just another brown dirt poor shithole place. That's their annual average or per capita income is depending on whose numbers you look at, between $3,000 and $4,000 a year per person or per capita as it is, and that sort of doesn't account for purchasing power, which when you redo the numbers, they can, some of these places you can buy a 20-pound bag of rice for like $1 or $2. But nonetheless, it's a very poor country, and in terms of that part of the world, like around India and that part of the world, they're not. It's they're probably got double the per capita income that say India does. But for a small island, they've got a population I think of 24 million, and so they've got almost the population of Australia, and they're very poor. What can I say? And their economy has been mismanaged. Corruption is rampant, and incompetence is rampant, and these sorts of things. So they're going to remain a poor country, and they've done some pretty dumb things recently. They've become quite socialist in a number of ways, which hasn't helped. And they took a big loan from the Chinese to develop a deep water port without wondering if they could even pay that back. Now they defaulted on their loans to China, and so the Chinese have taken a 99-year lease on the port, which they can also use for military purposes, by the way. So, but the issue of food shortages has sort of brought things to a head. Now, that doesn't mean that the Sri Lankans haven't some other challenges. They had a civil war there for a while and that sort of thing, but they were a basket case before the civil war, and still are now. So that may not have helped, but it hasn't materially altered the outcomes. And from that part of the world, the minute the local population becomes even slightly more affluent, they procreate like mad, and that of course erodes any wealth. They've all got that very Indian sort of chip on the shoulder attitude there. A lot of them want to come to Australia. There are people come here as migrants, and they're desperately trying to bring out every relative they can think of, 10th cousins and all that sort of stuff. So they still live very tribally as village folk, but English is spoken by most people on the island. But their exports have fallen to pieces. They have to import food. They're running out of food. The gas and prices of petroleum and gasoline, going through the roof haven't helped. So they're being assaulted on all sides on an economy that's very fragile. So now there's riots, and it's turning ugly there. I wouldn't be surprised if it collapses into revolution unless something's done in terms of massive food deliveries and so on. Assuming there's a food shortage, and for those poor countries, the main supply of grain for those poor countries came from Russia or the Ukraine. So with the conflict there, that's going to slow things down and slow the exports. So what will the globalists do? Now, the globalists have created this problem. They've deliberately and directly created the problems that we're now facing, and that Sri Lanka, those poor countries at the bottom, they're the ones that feel the pain the quickest. And so, the only thing we need to know is, have the globalists set all this up just so they can move millions of these people from Sri Lanka into Australia, for example. You can see the headlines by the globalist media now. There'll be pictures of little girls in pink and crying mothers, and that's always the fact. Got to be pink, must be pink by the. So they're going to have that, and undernourished babies that are dead bodies and all this sort of thing. So they're going to have all those pictures to. And then they're going to, well, we have to look at this situation here. It's a catastrophe. It's Armageddon. It's apocalyptic. We have to bring these people to Australia. We just have to do it. It's the only humane thing to do. And if you've got a problem with that, you damn fascist Nazi Hitler. So that'll be the play that they'll use. Either that, or they let these people that they indirectly have murdered millions of these people through the globalist moves on inducing the food and fuel shortages and inflationary price increases that we're seeing. But I think Sri Lanka is just the beginning of that. And all around that region, whether it be India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Indonesia, all around there. There's, the grain is heavily relied on, whether it be for human consumption or livestock, it doesn't really matter, but the grain is heavily relied on those areas. And again, coming primarily from Russia or Ukraine. Now, there isn't enough grain. Well, actually, if the Western countries went through rationing, you probably could scratch up enough grain in places like Canada, Australia, and elsewhere to America and so on to give to these poor third world countries such as Indonesia and again, Pakistan and so on. But that would mean white people would have to go under some pretty severe rationing, one loaf of bread a week sort of thing. I don't know, half a loaf of bread per person per week. I don't know how well that would go. Maybe the WHO has to, the World Health Organization has to do a parallel thing on a pandemic, or maybe the American government says anyone that complains about bread rationing is a white supremacist, is a fascist, is a Nazi, is Hitler. So, maybe they'll go down that path. But we know we're all being jerked around and lied to and cheated and deceived and being screwed over by the globalists. We know that. So it's really a case of what do they do? What do they decide to do? Either way, we're going to get screwed in some form or other. It's just how many lies do they want to tell, and how many brutal government repression measures they're going to use to force us to accept it. How much censorship on social media. They're going to use the full battery of things there. But I think their main go-to will be moving as many tens of millions of these black and brown folks, and black out of Africa into the West. I think that'll be the go, and they'll try and hide that under it's some humanitarian thing, and they're only trying to do it to stop little girls in pink from dying. I think it'll be something like that. But it's something to watch out for, and I think we need to be aware that there's a major scam being played here, one that was probably organised and documented, some months ago, if not years ago, and maybe their whole timetable got fucked up with Donald Trump winning the election, and they're just trying to sort of catch up now. But either way, let's watch out for that, because I think that's where it's heading. You've been Tacitus today, and your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.